You good? Okay. All right. Hey everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm trying to get this thing to work. There we go. Thanks for coming tonight. So we have a new spot. We used to be in the training room. Now we're out here. Hopefully it works. It looks like the projector's working and everything. So tonight we're talking about the future of WordPress, WordPress growth more specifically, and how reducing complexity and fragmentation can help accelerate that. I thought this was an interesting title. My wife told me it was boring, so hopefully the presentation is better. So who am I? My name is Gabe Mays. I lead WordPress at GoDaddy, also an organizer of this meetup, in case you didn't know. That's my wife, much prettier than I am. All right, so what's in this talk for you?
Dave, I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Is the microphone on, or is it just my hearing, or?
I think it's on. Is the sound?
It just records. It doesn't amplify.
Yeah, there's no sound system, unfortunately. Yeah. If you guys have any questions throughout, just interrupt me. No worries. So what's in this talk for you? Hopefully you'll develop a better understanding of WordPress growth and what drives it. Learn how Gutenberg is helping us unlock this future of growth. And then leverage what you learn here to make better decisions for your own sites, for client sites, plugins and themes, whatever you happen to do. All right, so WordPress growth. We talk a lot about WordPress growth. WordPress is big, it's growing, which is great. We talk about certain milestones. We hit 20% market share, 30% market share, but we don't talk about what drives that growth. And that's a problem because WordPress's growth is not guaranteed. So what you see down here, in terms of website options, WordPress's competitors are, Shopify, Squarespace, and Wix, and this is the trajectory of their growth over the last few years. Pretty significant, and more importantly, here's the trajectory of the growth of the percentage of sites that WordPress loses to these CMSs. So it's definitely growing, and on top of this, a website is just one way to be online. Some businesses just have Facebook pages, some just have an Instagram presence, some are just on YouTube. So there's a lot of competition for websites. I don't have the stats on these graphs, just because it's not public information, but I think the trajectory is enough to why we should care about this. So this is a highly optimistic view. This is if nothing really changes in terms of competitors. WordPress is at 34.6% market share now. Highly optimistically, WordPress would stop at about 55 to 60% market share. And how I got to these projections is the first one, it uses non-CMS growth as a proxy. So if you think of non-CMS, there's the population of WordPress sites. There's those that use CMSs, WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, things like that. And there's the ones that don't use CMSs. Those are largely HTML sites. And as those shrink, as they do over time, which is this blue line here, much of that share goes to WordPress. So if we were to extrapolate that trend, around 2030, we end up at right around 60% market share using 9 years of data for historical growth. And if that's one model. Another model is what are new sites using? So new sites here, using 3 years of data, we end up at around 58% market share. So, and this is a highly optimistic view, meaning there's other factors that aren't at play here. This doesn't factor in some of the stuff we saw in the prior slides. Realistically, we're probably talking about 45 to 50% market share, where WordPress totally asymptotes and stops growing. So, to sustain WordPress growth, we must understand it. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Any questions so far?
When you say no CMSs, does that include web applications? Because something like Facebook or Google has, everything they run is a custom-built, hand-coded application. So do those graphs take into account those types of websites?
This is W3 text data, which is the top 10 million sites on the web. it looks at host names. So Twitter and the end pages that or Twitter pages or Facebook, it only looks at Facebook or Twitter as one. So yes, they're included, but not in that way, if that makes sense. So historical WordPress growth factors. So historically, WordPress growth is overdetermined, meaning how did we get to this market share? If you've been around the web a while, you know WordPress was relatively easy to use in the early 2000s when it started out. The LAMP stack, meaning Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, is ubiquitous. You could run it anywhere. You had the rise of the internet. You had the rise of blogs. All these things contributed to WordPress. But the key factors were it was a strong market and fast product market fit. So WordPress was just another blogging platform, but in the early mid 2000s, movable type from 6 Apart was the leading blogging platform. Anybody remember that back then? So they changed their licensing, and a lot of people, there's like an exodus from movable type to WordPress. And that's where WordPress saw a lot of its growth. Then in the mid to late 2000s, WordPress evolved into a full CMS and captured more of that website share. So a strong market was why WordPress grew. A strong market can be good, but the dangers of a strong market are that it allows for strategic ineptness, meaning everything kind of looks like a good decision. And a good sign of this is, if you look at last year, WordPress was at 32% market share with TinyMCE as the editor. That's horrible. Like, how do you do anything useful with TinyMCE in WordPress? Yet somehow it was the most popular CMS. Like, that's the danger of a strong market, If a cable company built a CMS, it would probably look like that, All right, so the nature of WordPress growth today. Freelancers and agencies, a lot of you guys are responsible for a lot of WordPress growth. You build N new sites a year on WordPress, bringing more people into the ecosystem. We have a wide plugin and theme ecosystem, 50,000 plugins, 10,000 themes, strong brand, strong name recognition. You have open source, the network effects of it, and you have the WordPress community, so WordCamps and meetups like these. That's how WordPress grows. So contrast this with the growth of Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, those commercial proprietary CMSs. They're powered by marketing dollars. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing. Just last year, Wix, Shopify, and Squarespace combined spent $700 million on marketing. That's insane. How much did WordPress spend? 0, right? That's crazy. So in the next few years, it'll easily surpass $1 billion in growth. So that's what we're competing with, and those trend lines that you saw, that's what's driving that. So the important thing here is the difference between WordPress growth and what makes WordPress grow and what makes the other CMSs grow. And here's an analogy that I hope makes sense. So if we think of the site builders, they can pour dollars into marketing to power their marketing engines, right? They can just increase their marketing revenues and go more. WordPress, we can't create more wind, right? WordPress growth is organic, so we have to harness that growth better. We can't just pour marketing dollars into it. Does that resonate? Does that make sense? Yeah. So what actually drives WordPress growth, and what are the conditions under which it... I think, Maverick, you have a question? So if we think of WordPress as a sailboat, how I don't sail at all, so forgive me if this doesn't make sense. There's the wind, which creates lift that propels WordPress. That's the large surface area of the wide WordPress community, the wide ecosystem. And this massive ecosystem fills the long tail needs of WordPress. Whatever you need, there's probably a plugin for it. Those are the kind of things that power WordPress. Then there's a drag that slows WordPress growth. And this is the complexity of new users trying to succeed with WordPress, like we talked about. It's actually hard to do. And then there's also fragmentation. Well, if we think of the massive ecosystem that serves WordPress's needs, there's a fragmentation that slows it down. So like the 30 page builders. Like, page builders are great, but there's 30 of them. They don't work together. You can't use them together. They break sites. There's all this complexity around that. And that's some of the problems that create drag that reduces the growth and adoption of WordPress. Any questions on that? Make sense? So how do we keep WordPress growing? How do we reduce the drag? How do we increase the wind or the lift that actually drives WordPress growth? So I'm going to use Gutenberg as an example, and we'll kind of deep dive into how WordPress is helping us unlock this growth. All right, so the very bad drawing, but to help articulate something very simplistic. So we have the spectrum of what users want. We have the part that what WordPress does. Then the gap between what WordPress does and what users want is plugins and themes, right? Those could be, Beaver Builder. They could be Gravity Forms. Whatever it happens to be, that's the basics there. So all these plugins and themes give WordPress the power and flexibility at the cost of complexity and fragmentation. So there's a long tail of business needs, long tail of plugins and themes, but there's N ways to do X, right? You have 50,000 plugins, you have 10,000 themes, they don't work with each other. You change your theme, your site breaks. You disable Divi and you get all these shortcodes. Like, there's all these things that happen, right? That's a lot of complexity. And it's so complex that even smart people have trouble succeeding with WordPress, right? And I was actually reading a biography on Albert Einstein. I saw this quote in it, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. But he actually went on to, general and special theories of relativity, so it worked out for him.
It was on the internet, right?
It was on the internet, yeah, exactly. All right, so Gutenberg attempts to wrangle this complexity by kind of flattening the stack. So instead of having multi-purpose themes, page builders, widgets, shortcodes, all these things, you get a consistent approach. Everything is a block. How many of you guys have used Gutenberg, by the way? Okay, cool. So here's some real-world examples of how Gutenberg is actually simplifying the experience for new users. So here's how it's making WordPress easy and performant. So in the past, this is what new users interacted with when they started with WordPress. And how do you make a homepage with this, right? If you just had vanilla WordPress, how do you make a homepage? You need plugins, which you don't understand how all that works. It's quite insane. But Gutenberg makes this a lot easier. So this is a real site built with Gutenberg. Front-end editing is quite elegant, much easier than the old way to do it with just tiny MCE. I'll let this demo play for just a minute. Adding galleries, pictures of the gallery, changing it to a carousel. Editing the text, editing a button. Adding a form. So this is all Gutenberg, right? Which is pretty sweet. And I want to show you some demos of sites created with Gutenberg, just so you can see what's possible. So here's one site. This is a design site, it looks like. Got a contact form, portfolio. Here's another site. It's actually a picture of me. I got my hair done. Another beauty site. Some social media icons down here. This is another site. Nutritionist looks like. This is Michael Phelps' site, I guess.
That guy can swim.
He's okay.
Yeah.
This is a motorcycle Sons of Anarchy site, I guess. Great show, by the way, if you haven't checked it out. And nice menu, contact page. This is another portfolio. Here you have a painting site. This is pediatrician, looks like. This is a bakery site with a menu. This is a design site with appointments, studio, outdoor site, and this is a towing site. So these are all examples of sites with Gutenberg, but the cool thing is that that was the same theme on every one of those sites, and all those sites just had one plugin. Like normally you'd have to do that with like a dozen plugins, and that's really cool. And that's what Gutenberg's capable of, because it provides the heavy lifting. Then you just have one plugin that kind of augments all that stuff. So the plugin there is called CoBlocks. It's free in the repo if you want to use it, fork it, whatever. The theme is actually called Go. It's also free in the repo. I think it's in the theme review process, but it'll be available in the next few weeks or months or however long that takes. But like, this is crazy, right? All those sites, all those features, menus, forms, all that stuff, with all using the same theme and one plugin. Like, in terms of the context of WordPress, that's pretty amazing, because the typical site has, I don't know how many plugins, N plugins, right? So the other great benefit of this is I tested one of those sites, and these are the results I got. And this is just on $5 hosting. So sub 200 millisecond load times, 14 requests, light page size, and this is unoptimized, meaning there's no performance plugins, no nothing. This is just, it's because you're leveraging Gutenberg, which is very low overhead because it's in WordPress core. You see, this is a mobile test on Google page insights at 98, which is very good, and 100 on desktop. Here's the web page test results. So for those of you guys who aren't technical, this is awesome. This is a really good performance, because you don't have the bloat that WordPress is typical in WordPress. And that's what the power of Gutenberg is, by providing the heavy kind of foundational elements, so you don't have to add all this stuff to your site. Any questions? Yes?
Has anybody come up with a way of converting Divi back to Gutenberg?
I don't think so yet. They'd be a rich person, I'll tell you that, yeah, if you could convert the page builders, because yeah, because I mean, they're all not compatible with each other, but here you have a common set of things that are, right? And I think that's going to be our challenge, because if you think of the WordPress ecosystem, you're used to using Genesis, Elementor, Beaver Builder, GeneratePress, whatever your tool set is, and now you have to kind of switch to this. And that's going to be one of the things about figuring out when is right for you. I think it's going to be different for everyone. Whenever, I'd say every 6 months, try creating a new site, and at some point there'll be enough to start using it. It may not be for 2 years, but that's the direction we should start going. Yeah?
Where is it on the Gutenberg roadmap, and I just can't remember this off the top of my head, that it will allow you to start doing things outside the content area? So
that's Gutenberg Phase 2. That's in progress now. I forget the timeline. I want to say sometime in 2020, maybe early 2020, but it's in progress now. And actually, the theme that I showed you in those demos, Go, is going to be free in the repo. That is going to be Gutenberg Phase 2 ready, meaning it has multiple headers and footers in the theme, but once Phase 2 comes out, that'll just convert to blocks. So if you can, start using things that are Gutenberg native, so you can just take advantage of that stuff rather than rebuilding everything. Yeah.
Is that a Gutenberg dashboard?
Oh no, this is just screenshots of, this is like Google Insights, this is Pingdom, this is web page test. I just want to put them on one page just to show testing the site just native, right, without any optimization. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so the other great thing about Gutenberg is it empowers the WordPress companies to be more productive and create more value. So if we think about all the page builders, they're probably the most innovative groups in the WordPress ecosystem, because I mean, making WordPress do those things is pretty awesome, right? But it's a lot of support. You're maintaining your own framework, your own model, all that stuff. That's a lot of time rebuilding the same thing over and over. What if we had those bright minds building up and forward instead of in circles, right? So that's the other possibility of building on top of Gutenberg rather than building stuff over. And now we'll kind of walk through some ideas of kind of why that's possible now. So here's my great drawing again. So we have the spectrum of what users want. We have, again, what WordPress does. And then page builders provide a big part of what users want, right? The ability to add advanced customization and make the site look like what you want. And we have 30 plus page builders solving the same problems in different ways. This is insanity, right? I know we're normalized and used to it because this is just the way things are, but it's actually crazy if you think about it, that you can't use different things, that things break if you disable them. That's absurd. So how does Gutenberg solve this? So here's a very simplistic, another excellent drawing of what page builders do. So page builders give you a flexible interface, whether it's modules and Beaver Builder, to give you the advanced customization. People actually don't care about this. It's just this that enables this, right? Like, you don't care that it's a module or this or this. You just want to be able to build a custom site for yourself or your client. So what Gutenberg does is it becomes that flexible interface, that simple model that you can do complex things with to enable this. And this is what page builders can start focusing on from now, the advanced customization part. So instead of rebuilding these heavy frameworks and having to support them on all that stuff, these page builders can focus on this if they want to. Now that's a hard business decision because you have all this customers that use this old system. It's your proprietary stuff. It's kind of hard to make that decision, but that's the boat that the page builders are in now. Any questions on the model? Make sense? So it empowers the WordPress ecosystem to create and capture more value. They can build on top of Gutenberg instead of building the same things over and over. And that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too quick.
Can you give some examples of what page builders can do?
So I have one more slide.
Oh.
I forgot. I should probably put this at the end. So to try to summarize, we grow WordPress organically by reducing complexity and fragmentation. Hopefully that made sense. The analogy with the sailboat. If it didn't, we'll just pretend it did. We reduce complexity to make more users likely to succeed and stick with WordPress, which helps it grow. And we reduce fragmentation by getting the most out of our unique advantage, which is this ecosystem of talent that builds all these plugins and stuff. We can start doing it on top of Gutenberg rather than in all these bespoke ways. So now that's it. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Is the classic editor going to be phased out at some point?
They say they're supported through the end of 2021. Maybe beyond that, The hard part is that there's a wide gap between what people need and what page builders can do and what Gutenberg's capable of right now. So it's only been a year, it's growing fast, but there's still that wide gap. And it's going to be like, freelancers and agencies that kind of tell us when it's ready, If you look at the higher end agencies like 10up and Human Made, those guys they're doing a lot of revenue. They're doing very bespoke things with Gutenberg, but not everybody can do that quite yet, just because it's very expensive to do that kind of stuff at this point.
It seemed like the 2.0 where you can go outside the content there, and it seemed like that would be a big event that would cause people to take another look and say, oh, well, now I've got a lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
But won't it be the same thing all over again, because you'll still have themes which will all be Gutenberg compatible, and then instead of plugins, you'll have to figure out what blocks to add in. It seems there's a possibility of that. Anyhow, I was just wondering if anybody thought of that.
Well, I think we're still in the Wild West phase of Gutenberg.
Yeah.
I can almost assure you that themes are going away. So what I showed you, that theme that I showed you, and all those different sites, you can pretty much do 99% of sites, or you will be able to, with Gutenberg, probably by the end of next year. And at that point, you'll probably see a theme go into core, just a base vanilla theme, because to have a theme, all you need is like the index.php and like the style CSS file. And then themes will just be style packages.
That's what I want. That I think would be great.
And then everything that manifests as purely content is going to be a block, where you only need plugins for stuff that needs a back end, like memberships or something heavy like that. That's probably what we'll see. It's just a while till we actually get there.
So like if I wanted to do something that I normally do with a plugin, like, I can't think of it now, but like a simple SSL to fix the SSL, even that would be a block?
No, because that doesn't manifest as content. I mean, it eventually does, but it kind of just does things on the back end. Yeah. If you're doing stuff in PHP, yeah.
You would still be using plugins for that type of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
Are most of the plugins that are available for the classic editor, do they work for Gutenberg?
Well, if something works for the classic editor, it typically means it's a shortcode, or it adds a button to the tiny MCE bar, or just above it, or a box to the editor screen. If it does one of those things, since that's changed in Gutenberg, probably not, but you can port it over. But if it does something with some other part of WordPress, then there's probably no issue. Like I know Yoast had a hard time because he still has to build things for the classic editor and for Gutenberg. You know, just it's all on the editor screen. But something like Gravity Forms, I mean, they have a beta Gutenberg block, but the long-term view is probably editing forms in Gutenberg. We can move fields around and stuff. You know, instead of building your form in the Gravity Forms editor and just having a drop down to pick the form. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, but I can't think of it.
Then the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Has there been any talk about, and I'm not sure if I can even communicate this clearly what I mean, but so I've been using Gutenberg for a while since your first presentation on it, and I use the reusable blocks quite a bit for sites, for call to actions and things like that. And I realized the last couple sites I worked on, it'd be really handy if you could have a reusable block, but almost like a reusable shell. And what I mean by that is, kind of the site I just did, an example of, I wanted to have an image and a heading, and then a little excerpt, right? And I wanted it to be the same on various pages, but I wanted the image to be different. So I wanted like the shell to be a reusable block, so I could say image here, H2 here, paragraph block here. So I wanted to be able to change the image on the various pages.
So kind of like block templates.
Like a block template. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Or maybe so you want one that's not global. Meaning if you change it on one, it doesn't change them on the rest.
Correct.
Right? Because right now they're global.
Yeah, I want the container to be global, but the content inside it.
I mean, your best bet there is probably to use like advanced custom fields and create your own block. And just do it that way, or create your own block anyway, but advanced custom fields, if you use it, is a simple way to create blocks, or it has a new way to create blocks. But I agree, that's probably coming out. I mean, Gutenberg hasn't been out for a year yet, so there's a lot of stuff coming.
Now, I think the biggest thing about the Gutenberg will be a simplification of helping clients work with their site. Because you won't have to say, here's your new WordPress site. And by the way, we're going to spend the next 18 hours learning Elementor, which you're paying for. And they go, well, I thought I got a WordPress site. You know, there's just a big disconnect there for a new user. So to say, here's WordPress, and here's how you can do your page, and you can have your nice icon boxes, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And like in Elementor right now, if you add add-ons to it, you end up with 4 different widgets that all do icon boxes, with no way to know which one is the best one to use. So how can that be avoided in Gutenberg? Because
I mean, I don't think it can. You know, I think, I mean, that's the nature of open source and everybody adding their stuff. Okay. I think the upside is that with Gutenberg, you can have like a plugin like CoBlocks, like I showed, that has, all these different blocks in it. But there's also the block gallery coming, which is kind of more discrete functionality, and you can manage it that way. There's also the block editor, which you can decide what blocks show and don't show, and that's already available. And I would just say for clients, use that. But some of the higher end agencies, what they're doing is they're actually abstracting Gutenberg from WordPress. So they're just pulling the Gutenberg editor out of WordPress, and that's what they're giving their clients because it's very simplified. You don't have all the crap on the WordPress admin that's confusing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Dale?
I think it's worth noting that anytime you're given a tool that you can build something custom with, you can still get in trouble.
Yep.
Right? So even if you have a page builder, if you become really disciplined with it, you can avoid a lot of problems. If you go to Gutenberg and start playing with it and adding things and tweaking it, you can still get into it. It can still be tricky. It just takes time, no matter what product you use to learn it.
Yeah, I mean, you can hang yourself even with a short rope, you know? Like, and then some people, like, it's just, how did you do this? You know, it's pretty incredible the ways they find to do screwy things. So,
Yes.
it's absolutely right.
So the demos that you showed,
Yep.
are those ones that you did, or are they examples from other people?
So,
See the back end of the-
yeah, so I'll actually cut the recording here on the video. I don't want to push GoDaddy at all, but those are from our new onboarding flow, and those are all ones that we had, you know. So, bye.